Hi friends, I'm back with another Thrift Flip episode. So winter is still in full swing here in Texas. Like the next couple of days are literally going to be freezing. Okay, I recorded this intro like 2 months ago and it's no longer freezing in Texas, but it was a little cold today. And I'm thinking this would be a great time to upcycle a coat. Back when I lived in Chico, I thrifted this really nice suede jacket, but it is definitely not my size, and I bought it with the intention of like altering it to fit me. Let me put it on real quick so you can see how gigantic it is. Yeah, it's like literally a mom jacket, like mom-sized coat. Okay, let me just stand here so you can see just like how huge it is. It is really, really big. And the most problematic thing are probably the shoulders. So recently I've been seeing that like the 60s fashion has been trending. So like mod style and like A-line dresses or like A-line silhouettes in general. So I'm thinking that a perfect silhouette for this kind of a coat will be an A-line shape. I'm probably just gonna like chop off the sleeves, cut the body part into an A-line, sew it back together, and then just reattach the sleeves. Oh, I also have an idea of what I want to add to this jacket. So the color of it is already like pretty intense, and I want it to be like super extra. So I want to add fur, like fur collar and fur cuffs to the sleeves. So I have this green fur, and I think maybe a collar out of this would be good. Where the heck am I gonna wear this to? I promptly stopped with that negative talk and I got straight to chopping. First, I cut off the sleeves, and I traced the seam as closely as possible when I was cutting, just in case, to make sure that the sleeve is not too short. Again, sorry about the camera parameters on the screen. I have since figured out how to make them go away, so they will not be a problem moving forward. To determine the breadth of the shoulders, I took a coat that fits me well and I used it as a pseudo pattern. I traced the armhole area and then I made the front armhole a little bit deeper. To produce the A-line shape, I used a ruler to mark a straight line from where the armhole ends to the bottom of the coat. And then I cut along this line. I then folded the coat in half and I traced the outline of my new shape that I just created onto the second half of the coat with a chalk marker. And I cut it out. For the sleeve shape, I applied the same concept. I traced the shape of the sleeve of the coat that fits me well, and I cut it out according to that shape. And I made sure to only trim up to the cuff because nobody got time for reworking the cuffs on a coat. Once both of the sleeves were cut out, I overlaid them on top of each other in a mirrored way, and I trimmed the front of the armhole area a little bit. Then I matched up the armhole area of the coat to the armhole area of the sleeve. I pinned them together and I began sewing. Because this is suede, the material is not going to fray, so I didn't need to use an overlocking stitch for creating this seam. One thing that I did find to be super helpful though when working with suede or leather or pretty much any fabric that kind of sticks is using a sewing machine foot that has a roller on it. So I just attached the sleeve to the coat bodice using a regular straight stitch with my sewing machine. Oh, and fun fact, standard 1490 needles work well for suede, so thankfully I did not have to go and buy any specialty needles. Not gonna lie though, sewing this material was quite a challenge. It's thick, you have to go slowly, and it's just challenging. Once the sleeves were attached, I proceeded to the side seams. This step is very straightforward. I just pinned the front and the back together on the sides and add the sleeves, ensuring that the armpit seams are all matched up. And then I went to my sewing machine to sew the seam shut with a straight stitch. And again, I continued to use my rolling foot here just to kind of help the fabric move along better. But even despite using a rolling foot here, this was still a bit of a struggle. You could kind of see me pulling the coat along a bit just because of how much it was sticking to the surface of the sewing machine. Unfortunately, I don't have any tricks for this problem, so I just brute forced my way through, as I occasionally do in life. Now with the coat finished, it was time to begin the collar and the cuffs. And for the first time, I decided to actually cut out a paper pattern for these pieces, which I did by tracing the collar shape onto a piece of paper with about 1/2 inch of a seam allowance. Then I cut out the shape and I folded it in half to trim and even it out. Ooh, fun tip, you can get free paper for your sewing patterns from the store whenever you buy something fragile. You know how they like wrap it up usually into paper? So that's where I get all my pattern paper from. For the cuffs, I measured out the width and the height of the cuff that I wanted, and I cut out a parallelogram according to these dimensions. However, I later just turned it into a plain rectangle. Now with the pattern pieces cut out, I pinned them onto the fur fabric and I cut out the fur shapes. I wish I had watched some tutorials for how to cut fur prior to doing this, because I ended up with a lot of segments of trimmed pile around the edges, and now they look like a kid with a bowl cut. I then used these same paper pattern pieces to measure out the lining, for which I used a similarly colored cotton fabric. I cut out 2 cuff lining pieces, 1 for each cuff, and I cut out 3 collar pieces from this fabric, and you'll see why in a little bit. I didn't want to use my serger overlocker for sewing the lining to the fur because it would have been really messy. So instead, I used the overlocking stitch on my sewing machine with a guided edge foot that was perfect for overlocking. I began with the cuffs, and I first sewed the lining onto the fur piece along the long edge. Then I folded it in half to make it into like a long tube, and I sewed the fur portion shut, and I sewed parts of the lining shut, but I left a gap in the middle. The rest of the process for sewing the cuff is pretty much just like sewing a scrunchie. I turned the cuff inside out and I attached the lining to the other side of the fur by pulling that seam through the gap that I had left in the lining. And the reason for doing so is so that all of the seams are hidden inside of the cuff. Lastly, I turned the cuff inside out with the lining facing outward, and I closed the gap in the lining that I had left earlier using a straight stitch. And voila! The cuff is finished. Now for the collar pieces, I sewed 2 lining pieces together on the bottom edge using an overlocking stitch. And I also sewed one of the lining pieces to the fur collar piece, also on the bottom, also using an overlocking stitch. Okay, so this is what the resized coat looks like. I really like it. I think it kind of has a 60s vibe to it with this A-line silhouette. Yeah, I think it fits great. It's super cute. I'm pretty happy with the resizing efforts. So now it is time to add the collar. And because I decided to make this collar detachable, I really don't want to like damage the coat underneath, because initially I was thinking like maybe I could do snaps or something like that, so I could like just like snap it on the inside, but if I put any snaps on the coat itself, it's like permanent damage. So I came up with a pretty genius solution: magnets. So I bought these neodymium magnets off of eBay, so they're just like little circle little cylinders, and I'm thinking I'm just gonna like put a bunch of them in the area around the neck and a couple on the flap. And the way that I'm going to do this, I have the collar piece, like the fur collar, and it has a lining on the inside. And I also have the backing for the collar. And this is, I'm going to sew this together, and it's going to be kind of like a mouth. Hold on, let me put this together. So I'm going to sew these 2 portions together, and it's going to be kind of like a mouth, and like that's going to go onto the collar of the coat. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sew magnets into each of these 2 halves, like in the matching parallel areas. All right, let's give it a try and see if it actually works out. I don't know if the magnets are going to be strong enough to like actually hold through the thick suede fabric of the coat, but let's try it. I placed the magnets along the collar backing to mark where I'll be sewing the little pockets for them. I placed most of them along the neck area, and I placed one on each of the flaps of the collar, and also one in the middle. Then I used a straight stitch to sew small pockets at the marked locations. And I left one side open in these tiny pockets so that I could slip the magnets through that side. And then once the magnets were in, I sewed them closed by hand. After that, I attached the backing of the collar to the lined fur piece of the collar, but I lost the video footage of that somehow. I left a small gap open on top of the collar so that I could slip the magnets into the fur half of the collar through that hole. To determine where to place the magnets in the fur half of the collar, I slipped the magnets in one at a time through that gap that I had left, and I let them find their magnet partner from the collar backing portion, where the magnets were already sewed into place. Once the two magnets found each other, I sewed little pockets around the magnets in the fur half by hand. The final step is sewing shut that small gap that I had left for inserting the magnets. And now the collar is finished. And actually the whole coat is now finished. To style this coat, I searched for inspiration on Pinterest, mostly looking for 60s mod outfits. I think it would have looked really great with some colored tights a la iconic 60s Twiggy outfits, but unfortunately I don't have any pink or mint colored tights. However, I saw a lot of 60s outfits with knee-high socks, particularly prevalent in the Andre Courage designs, so I went for that look with some colored socks that I have. And now, let me show to you the final product. But before I do that, let me just remind you of what this coat looked like before I started. For my first outfit, I just kept the button-up shirt and the pink sweater that I wore to work for that day, and I swapped my work pants for a jean miniskirt, some pink knee-high socks, and shiny heeled Oxfords. To be honest, I don't think this is really giving 60s much, but it's kind of cute. Would I wear this outside? Probably not. For my next outfit, I added this triangle necklace that I recently thrifted. And I wore just a simple cropped t-shirt to match the color of the collar and the cuffs. And I wore one of my favorite skirts that I've made. I made it out of a pair of shorts that my neighbor Susan gave to me when I lived in Boulder. She was such a sweet lady. She gave me a bunch of comforters and lots of her cute clothes that I modified. My shoes are a pair of Asos platform flats that I thrifted like a decade ago. I think I could wear this outfit to go somewhere cute with my friend Yana, who also likes to make bold fashion choices. For my third outfit, I wanted to pair the coat with some neutral gray pieces so that it could stand out, but I'm not sure a metallic iridescent top is particularly neutral. This top I made back when I was in grad school in LA back in like 2015, I think. The skirt I made in 2009. And I wore my iridescent heels with this outfit, but realistically, I don't go anywhere that would warrant this level of fashion. Alright internet, do your thing, make me famous so that I could have places to go in my ridiculous clothing. I also wanted to show how the coat looks when it is buttoned up, and I think it is super cute. I just need to figure out how and where to wear it. Send me your ideas in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching me make silly clothes again. So I actually am pretty satisfied with the coat. I thought it was gonna be really weird, but I did wear it outside today for the first time, and I felt pretty cute. I got a lot of compliments on it. So the next couple of videos are going to be a little bit different, but way more fashionable. So tune in a couple of weeks for the surprise content, and I'll see you then. Bye.